Today I'm going to show you how to change the oil in a 2002 Acura MDX. It's a pretty basic thing, changing the oil, so these instructions probably would apply to most cars. So let's get started. The very first thing to do in preparation for an oil change is go ahead and buy your oil. Make sure you buy enough for your car model, and also buy the filter if you're going to change the filter. I change the filter every time because it doesn't cost that much, and then I know I have a clean filter each time. You can change it every other time. That's what the manufacturer's manual recommends for this car. But I go ahead and change it every time. So at the store there'll be a little book near the oil filters that you can look up your car model, and it'll tell you which filter, what kind of air filter and oil filter, if you want to get those things. The kind of oil that you want to use is shown in the owner's manual or the shop manual, so choose the kind of oil that you need for your climate. The first step is to warm up the engine. So just let the car run for a few minutes and it'll warm right up. Of course, to remove the drain bolt, we'll need to find the oil pan. It'll be at the base of the oil pan at the lowest point. So we'll look under the car and see if we can find the oil pan. And mine is labeled nicely with engine oil and an arrow pointing to the bolt. Not every car is this obvious, but there's the drain bolt. And I'll need to get a wrench to take that off. The wrench for this drain bolt is a 17mm, and I'm using a ratchet wrench, and I also will use a pipe to help me break the bolt loose. Also, make sure that your ratchet wrench is set to off so that you're actually unscrewing the bolt. You don't ever want to put a lot of torque on it in the wrong direction because it'll tear it up. Once you've broken the bolt loose, you can just use your fingers to loosen it. And at this point you want to make sure that you have the drip pan underneath it. Be careful, the oil is hot because you warmed up the engine, so keep your finger out of the way. You can just let the bolt fall into your catch pan and retrieve it later. And it should unscrew very easily because it's well oiled. And just let the oil drain into your drip pan here. And make sure that you move the drip pan back as far as you can toward the front of the car in this case, because it's draining backwards. As the oil gets drained out, the stream will go down. And you can see it already, the stream is going to move towards the front. So you want to have your oil pan in place to catch all of that oil. I like to clean the bolt before I put it back in, so I just put it in a fairly clean rag and hold it and unscrew it a little bit, and that gets all the old oil off of it. Check this washer, make sure it looks okay. In this case it's an aluminum washer. The oil filter on a 2002 Acura MDX is in the wheel well next to the oil pan. You see the oil dripping there from the oil pan, and then this is the filter right here inside the wheel well. And you can reach it with the tire and the wheel on pretty easy, and just loosen it with your hand if it's not too tight. This one's not too tight, but if you need to, you can also put a wrench on there, an oil filter wrench, and just loosen it. You also want to make sure you have the drip pan under it when you take it off. So because I can catch the drip from the drain bolt hole and from the filter in one pan, I'm just going to go ahead and take off the filter, even though the bolt hole is not finished dripping. And there's going to be oil in the filter when you remove it, so be aware of that. It'll be dripping from that as well. Just lay the filter in the drip pan. Some of them have a little spot to set the filter and drain all the oil out of it. This one has a little spot there, you can see. And just drain that out before you throw it away. A very important part of changing your filter is to inspect the filter plate where the gasket touches, and make sure that the gasket came off with the filter. In this case it did. This is just the metal. But if you saw a rubber ring that was stuck here, you'd want to pull that off, because if you have a gasket here and then you screw on another filter, it won't seal right. The gasket will squeeze out and you'll have a leak. That's happened to me 2 or 3 times probably now. So just make sure that the gasket that was on the filter stayed with the filter. And you can also look at the filter and see that that black ring right there is still with the filter, so we're good. If a filter's been on a long time, sometimes the gasket will want to stick to the car, so just make sure that it comes off and that you've got a good clean plate to work with up here. So when the oil is all drained out and it has stopped dripping or is dripping really slowly, you can put the bolt back in the drain hole. Should go in very easily. It's oiled threads. So once you've got it in, you should be able to just turn it very easily with your finger. Like that. See how easily it turns? Go ahead and tighten it down. Finger tight. And then when you have it tight enough with your fingers, you get the wrench. Sure it's turned on, and just tighten it hand tight. Not gorilla tight, but just hand tight. Before we put the new filter on, let's make sure we got the right one. I buy the same brand usually every time, and so that's a 3312 that I just took off, and this is a 3312 that I'm putting on. So let's take the new filter out of the box and put some fresh oil on the gasket. Put the new filter on the car and make sure it's threaded right as you get it started. You have to hold it at the right angle as you're starting it, and then it should turn fairly easily. Go ahead and turn it until it just touches the surface of the mating surface, so the gasket's just touching, and then turn it 3/4 of a turn more. 1, 2, 3, and that'll be plenty tight. Do not over tighten your filter. You'll regret it later. I've had to over tighten filters where I had to tear the filter apart to get it off and use a chain wrench, so you don't want to do that. Just once the gasket touches, turn it 3/4 of a turn after that, and that'll be plenty tight, and you'll be able to get it off later, especially if you remember to oil the gasket. So the final step is to add your oil back to the engine. It's a really important step. On the Acura, the oil cap is right here on the front of the engine and kind of down low, so it's really not easy to get to, but I'll show you how to deal with that. A lot of engines will have the oil cap on the very top, much easier to get to. So just remove the cap. And because this is so deep down inside the engine, I have a special funnel that I use to keep from getting oil all over the place. So just get that funnel inserted into the hole very well, and then you can pour the engine oil in. When you think you've got the engine about 80% full of oil or so, go ahead and check the oil. You don't want to overfill it. This is still low. The recommended quantity of oil is in your shop manual, and I'm changing the oil and the filter, so it'll take 5 quarts at oil change including filter. So that's how much comes in the large jugs that I use. So I'll just pour this whole jug in. When you're finished adding oil, just wipe up any that might have spilled while you were pouring. It really does stink when it burns off the engine. After you verified that all the bolts are tight and the filter's on and the cap is back on, go ahead and start the engine. And look under the car to see if there's any leaks. And that's how you change the oil in a 2002 Acura MDX. Thanks for watching.